Hey, my name is Brandon. My Instagram is How Is That Street Legal? And I've had tons of people ask me to make YouTube videos or record how I build the bodies for these cars that I'm currently doing. And I write at that process in the stage of building, so you can follow me through the process of building a body, what it takes to make that project look like that project in carbon fiber.
All right, this is not smart. So, okay, that failed. Also not that.
Stream of conscious and have a good old time. How do you say your last name?
Hegedus.
That's what I thought. All right.
Yeah, just like it looks.
Okay. Yeah, we have some other buddies that their names don't look the same, so we have a good laugh about that. So, all right. So, Jim, are we recording already or no?
Yeah, Dave, we're live, we're rolling, and
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
take one.
So, I mean, Brandon, if you're cool, I'll just do the little intro thing, and then we just start talking about stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Welcome, Seven Spot. Dave Lassell here from the HiCost Locost Channel, and we got a guest for you today, Brandon Hegedus, Mr. Hot Rod himself from How Is That Street Legal on Instagram and on YouTube. And we're going to ask a bunch of questions and let him talk about himself. So here we go. Brandon, introduce yourself to the boys.
My name is Brandon Hegedus. I'm kind of just a self-taught nobody, is what I like to say. Just I learned everything I know just from trial and error and picking stuff up just over the years and not being afraid to try things. And yeah, here I am.
Yeah, great. I mean, there are a lot of us here that are kind of in that same boat. We're just learning as we go, but you're like ahead of the curve for most of us, and it's great that you want to share information. So you have you've got quite a pile of project cars that have been completed. You want to just knock out a little list of things. We're going to direct people to Instagram and YouTube anyway to check it out, but that list was great.
Well, how far back do you want me to go?
I mean, I saw those old. You had an old Ford sedan, and the Crazy Cummins one was pretty wild too.
Yeah, well, I'll start a little before that actually. So when I was a kid, I was into woodworking, and my dad had a little one-car garage, and we never really had video games and stuff like that. So, and my mom was always trying to keep us away from the TV. So, um, my dad was a bricklayer, and so he had this little one-car garage, and for company write-offs at the end of the year, he would need to spend money on tools, otherwise it would go to the government in taxes. So, at the end of the year, we would always go to the tool show and figure out what we wanted. Maybe one year it was a table saw or a welder or a bandsaw or whatever. And so we packed this little one-car garage over the years with as many machines as we could fit in it. And then it was just kind of my brother and I's kind of domain. We just got to teach ourselves. And when my dad had time after work and stuff, he would show us a few things, and sometimes we would show him a few things. Um, and then when I turned 15 or 16, I got a job as a cabinet maker. And I came home from work that very first day, went out to the garage like I always did after school, and stood around with the lights on, looked around, had no interest in touching anything woodwork related. Stood there for half an hour, turned the lights off, went inside, never touched wood for pleasure ever again. So, because of that, I kind of had to figure out another hobby or something that piqued my interest. And so I slowly got into building go-karts, repairing go-karts, and that sort of thing. So that's where it all kind of started. And yeah, eventually I started when I got my first job. And I remember going to the racetrack. We'd go to the drag strip with my friends in high school, and you'd always see the old men, and they would always be like, back when I was your age, I had this and this and this and this, and then I got married, or I had a baby, or I got divorced and I had to sell it. And so they would all sit there bench racing. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't ever want to be that guy. What can I do now in my life at whatever age I was, 16 or 17, that can make sure I'm not that guy. And so I thought, when I get my first job, I'm going to save up and I'm going to use that money, or some of that money, to buy hot rod parts. Because that way, someday when I'm married and I have kids or whatever, I'll already have enough parts that she can't make me sell anything. I'll be invested too deep. And so that's what I did. So I started buying parts for a T-bucket because that was my plan. I wanted to build some awesome T-bucket. And then as and I knew at the time I couldn't do that in my dad's one-car garage. So it was a long dream. I wasn't going to be able to do anything with it until I had a place of my own. So eventually got married, built a home of our own, built a garage, and was finally able to bring all the T-bucket parts from my dad's attic and the basement and all these places I stored them over the years, lay them out on the floor in my garage, looked at them and realized I'm going to spend like $80,000 building a car that's never going to be worth anything more than 14 grand. And so I sold it everything, and I thought I need to get into something like a rat rod where I can learn. So I sold everything, and I bought a 1927 coupe body, like a tall T. And that kind of started everything. That kind of started my first scratch built car.
So that one came before the Cummins slammed one.
That one is the Cummins one. So that was kind of my thought. I wanted to do something different. I mean, when it comes to hot rods, everything has really been done. I mean, they've been around for 80 years. Everything's been done. And so I thought, I'm going to put a 12-valve Cummins in this. And at the time, I mean, this was the first car I'd ever built from scratch. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. And so I put this diesel in and thought, I'm going to make like 300 horsepower. I'll really beef up the frame. I'll really, just overbuild everything. And so that's what I did. Well, a Cummins diesel, if you know anything about those, every like 3 hours and $100 you throw at those things, you'll get another 100 horsepower out of it. And so it started with 300 horse, and by the time I sold it a couple of years later, it was like 855 horsepower and 1,504 pounds of torque at the wheels or something was the last that I saw on the dyno before I sold it. And yeah, it got way out of control.
Yeah, that was on a P pump?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're kind of nuts. There are a bunch of guys that are transplanting them into Land Cruisers, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm on that list, but I don't think I've. It's too much fiddling.
The engine; those are amazing engines. They're unstoppable. They're just incredible. But I mean, they have their purpose, obviously their place. But I got to a point in that car where, I mean, the car weighed like 3,000 pounds, and more than half of that was the engine alone. And it was never designed to make that kind of power, right? So, yeah, I just got to a point where it was just unsafe. I had small kids, and they needed a dad, so I thought it's time to sell this thing. It's a complete monster. Just starting it up was intimidating.
Yeah, fun, but not necessarily the most useful thing.
No, totally useless. I mean that's like all hot rods, totally useless. Yeah. But it was really cool.
Well, that's awesome. And then I think you also had kind of like a cycle cart looking thing. You have a small
so that was the 1929 Speedster. So the first car I built from scratch was that diesel car, and then I built a 26 sedan that I chopped. Because one of the things when I built the coupe, I thought I'm going to chop this by 7 inches, and then after I cut it, I thought, oh, that's not low enough. I could have gone lower. So then I got my hands on a sedan, and I think I cut like 9 or 10 inches out of that. It was crazy, and then sectioned the bottom as well by like 6 inches. The thing was like a pancake. And then so that project, I think it was like halfway done. Somebody came and offered me way too much money for it, so I sold it as it was, and then I built a 27 Roadster for my brother. And then after that, that's when I built the 1929 Speedster that you're talking about. So that one was a 1929 Ford. It started as a sedan. All of the chassis are the same. I had a friend, he was looking for a chassis, he was looking for a body. And we found one up near me. So went over, bought it. It was a complete car, in old shape, right? But bought it, he took the body off, sent it home with him, and then I had this chassis left over, and I called him and said, "What are we gonna do with this chassis? Do you want it?" And he's like, "Nah, I don't know. Give me $200 for it. You can have it." So I was like, "Okay." So kept it, and it was about around Christmas time. There was like the 2 week break for Christmas and New Year's, and so in that 2 weeks, I just had some, shower thoughts, I guess, and chopped it up and did a kick up in the back and underslung the front and kind of turned it into a speedster chassis over those 2 weeks. So that one wasn't really supposed to happen, but it just kind of fell in my lap. And 2 weeks later, I had half a car.
Yeah. So you already mentioned that you never touch wood again as a hobby, but your professional woodworking is that's what you do. Yes. I saw
Well,
you
yeah,
walked into it.
yeah. So when I got into cabinet making as a career, I went to school and became a cabinet maker, and then um, yeah, did lots of custom millwork and things for 20 some years, and just recently, just kind of last year, early last year, or even end of 2023, I quit doing that and started doing this full time.
Well, yeah, it's amazing. I was like, I was just scrolling through your Instagram to refresh some things today, and I was like, hey man, when Chris Runge likes your post, you you're on a different level.
Chris is a great guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's also so open with knowledge and skills. Like this is one thing am enjoying about getting into this side of car culture. Is like there's not a lot of gatekeeping in we're going to build it from scratch land. Because
Yeah.
everybody knows it can take like it could take you 2 weeks. It could take me 8 years, and we're still going to have the same amount of fun. It's kind of wild.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing I love about Chris and guys like this, I mean, it's all hot rodding, right? But like Chris is totally self taught. I think that's amazing. And I mean, that's where it comes from. That's where this stuff comes from. I mean, hot rodding has always been just stuff you figure out as you go, and you make mistakes and you learn from it. You can't be afraid to try. And I love that's what I love about the culture or the community is there's we live in a world now. I've said before, like I don't know, there's not many places in this world now where the Wright brothers could really succeed. I mean, if I tried to build an airplane in my garage or something that nobody had ever done before, let's say I built a quadcopter in my garage that I could sit in, and I took it down to the park in a soccer field and tried to test it, the cops would show up immediately, right? And there would be all sorts of this and that would shut me down, that wouldn't allow me to innovate like that. That wasn't a thing back in the day. You could actually do those sorts of things, and so I think that there's a lot of our modern era where a lot of that creativity or ideas kind of get stifled by legalities and insurances and things like that, which is kind of sad. So I love it when you find guys that are still doing this stuff in their garage and just trying things and doing things the old way. Yeah, that's how innovation happens.
Yeah. So I first heard of you when I saw you driving the 156 in the street.
Okay, yeah.
Uh, I don't remember when it must have been a couple of years ago. So it's the first time I was like, interacting on the internet. And but you want to talk about where that came from? Like, how did you end up going from 29 Ford to 62 Formula One car?
Well, kind of like I said, in the hot rod world, a lot of that stuff had been done, right? And and that's kind of what I had found. I had built that diesel car. It had made a ton of power and was really, I mean, it was a kind of a dyno queen by the end. And then going from that crazy powered heavy car to my little speedster that had a 13B rotary engine in it, making like 155 horsepower and like 94 pounds of torque. I mean, and I think the thing weighed like 1,340 pounds or something. It was teeny tiny. And so going from that to this smaller car, I just realized like the Europeans, I mean, they know what they're doing. This is where it's at. It's not all about this giant power and a big dumb chassis. It's all about a tuned chassis and refined power. So after I'd done all this stuff in rat rods, I thought, all this stuff has kind of been done, and I'm kind of done with this world of things. It's not really challenging me anymore. And so I had always looked at these 60s Formula One cars and thought how cool that was, and thought, man, it'd be really cool to feel what that's like, to see what that's like to drive, and experience building it and learn stuff, right? I mean, there's suspension geometry involved in that. The body work, I'd never done anything like that before. Mid-engine was really cool to me, and so I sold the diesel car and I used that money towards building a 156. And so again, I just wanted that. I wanted something that would challenge me. I wanted something different. I wanted something that would force me to learn, and that I knew I would screw up and have to go back and rebuild certain things. So
Yeah. So when you started that process, did you look at old drawings? Did you buy books? Did you just say, "Hey, I bet I can make these triangles touch each other"?
kind of, yeah, kind of. Honestly, I did buy a book just for photos and some history and stuff like that. Um, but I mean, there's really no plans. There's no plans that exist. There's no. I mean, you can get basic measurements, wheelbase, track width, things like that. Overall height and things. But there's no drawings. There's no blueprints, anything like that exists. So a lot of it was just looking at photos. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of old historic photos, and looking at a guy and thinking, okay, he's an Italian guy, so he's probably about this tall, and he's standing next to it, and his hip kind of comes to here, and this guy looks a little taller, his hip comes to here, and a lot of like measuring the wheels. Okay, these are 15-inch wheels. That means metal to metal, they're going to be about 16-inch, and then I can extrapolate that into probably about this measurement for this. And so there was a lot of that. Really, I kind of had to do everything on the fly, and just kind of figure it out from drawings and proportions. Really, I mean, if it looks right, it looks right.
Yeah. Did you apply that also with like all of your suspension geometry stuff?
No, the suspension geometry I actually did in CAD. Well, I don't know if you call it CAD, I guess. Online, I found a program online where you can essentially draw your stuff and put in all your parameters and stuff, and then you can actually actively watch the suspension move and watch your roll centers and instant centers and stuff. So
It-
I learned a lot doing that as well.
Did you do that in VSUSP? Or there are a couple of them now.
I think it was racingaspirations.com
Okay,
or
all right.
dot
Yep.
.co. I forget what it is. .org
Raising
or something.
Aspirations. I'm on there too.
Yeah, that's a great site.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I'm not smart enough to use it correctly yet, but I'm gonna have to be soon because
Yeah,
I got parts
it's
to
a lot of
build.
fun. It was funny because when I mean, again, I came into that not really knowing anything about stuff, and I mean, I had done the four link, designed a four link in that diesel car, so I knew a little bit about that geometry. So then you just kind of turn it the other direction, and now you're talking about upper and lower control arms, right? Kind of the same geometry. So I had a tiny bit of experience with it, and what it would do as far as traction patches and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, really, it was just jump in the fire and figure it out. Watch some YouTube videos, um, and then once you start to see it, you start to see it everywhere. You start to see it in your sleep, and next thing you know, you're driving past like a lowered Volkswagen Jetta that the kids just kind of cut the springs, and you're like, oh my gosh, that kid has no idea what he's done, or or these lifted trucks with the big deep dish wheels and stuff, and you're like, oh my gosh, these guys have no idea what kingpin inclination is and what they've done, and you know you get really
Yeah,
judgmental.
I watch a lot of the stance videos of like at the
Yeah,
European car meets, and the guys are going with like minus
it's
30
crazy.
degrees camber. The sticker is still on the tire, and it hasn't touched the ground yet, and they've got like 90 miles, but they got to flip the
Yeah,
wheels around. I'm like, it's awesome, but why? But
yeah,
I mean, but if they're good at it, I kind of have to respect it. They went through all that to see whose oil
right.
pan's going to break first. Like,
Well, and when it comes to cars, I mean, how much stuff on cars is actually functional outside of race cars? Almost nothing, right? I mean, it's an art form, it's a style thing. I mean, it's like clothing. How much clothing is actually functional, and how much of it is just to cover us and keep us warm? You know?
yeah, and if you think it looks cool, it is cool. Like,
Yeah, of course.
there's a lot to be said for that, you know. So you made it through the 156. It was on the road. You drove it in the parking lots, and then it ends up getting shipped to Miami for.
Yeah, yeah. So that car was never street legal, I mean, I had no lights and, no this, no that. I did take it on the street a couple of times with a temporary permit and things. But um, yeah, lots of driving in parking lots, testing it in big empty lots and things like that. And yeah, eventually did a couple magazines and stuff with it, and then yeah, I went down to Miami.
And is that sold now?
Yeah, yeah, that car's
Okay.
yeah,
I
that car's
saw that it
gone.
was for sale, or I've seen the things like, "Hey, make me an offer," and I was like, too bad.
Yeah,
Um, but that's awesome. So when you're doing, maybe we'll just like move on to the 206 a little bit,
sure.
because that seems like it's another crazy project that has come out really like minty. So how did
Yeah.
that one come along?
Well, I wasn't looking to build another car at that, so I had the 156, and I still had it, and then a friend passed away, and it turned out that he had a 68 AMC AMX in a tucked away in a garage that hadn't been touched or seen a sun for like 30 some years. So he was passing away from cancer. Him and I kind of made a deal on his deathbed and to get it back on the road. And so he passed away, and that car became mine. So um, I spent a summer enjoying it and fixing it up, replacing everything rubber on it, and getting it running again. Um, and then I mean, it was an awesome car, but I'm not really a muscle car guy. I wasn't truly the right home for that car. I fulfilled my promise in getting it back on the road and stuff. But then one day I was scrolling the internet, just thinking, I wonder what's out there for something that catches my interest for another project someday. And I came across the 1966 Dino 206 SP, and particularly chassis number 22. So they built 18 of those cars I think between 65 to 67, I believe, somewhere in there. And um, one or two of them got cut down and rebodied into a Spyder. And when they did that, I mean, the look of the Spyder version in chassis number 22 is just incredible. It stopped me in my tracks when I found that, just scrolling the internet. And and immediately I was like, holy cow, I have to build that. That is just absolutely incredible. Everything about it is just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I thought, how am I going to finance that? And so I listed the AMX for sale, and sold it. That a guy messaged me immediately. I listed it, and like within 20 minutes, a guy messaged me, and he's like, I just retired. I finally, for the first time in my life, have money. I've been looking for one of these cars in exactly that condition, that's drivable and restorable, for 20 years. Do not sell that car to anybody else. I have been looking for that exact car, 394 speed AMC AMX, for years. I'll come and look at it tomorrow. Don't sell that car. So um, it went to him. He was the right home for it, and I used that cash to finance starting to build the 206 SP.
So like when you started that, did you have an idea of like how much tubing did you would need? Did you just start buying tubes? Did you draw up on the floor? Because I know you ended up with like full size prints to tape to the side when you're making the buck. Like
Yeah.
how does it like start for you?
Uh, really, a lot of guessing, honestly. Just a lot of eyeballing it. I mean, as far as how much tube I would need and stuff, I don't really know. So I just, you generally count this and count that, and then, and then order 30% more, essentially, is kind of what I did. Um, and yeah, I mean, just looking at same thing, looking at photos on that card. There is a original sketch, like an original rendering sketch from that era, that you can find online. It's really grainy and kind of a crappy, um, you know it's been scanned and faxed around too many times, so it's kind of grainy and stuff. um, but it does exist, and I got some ideas from it. I changed a few things, obviously, from their chassis to mine. My chassis is a lot stiffer than theirs would have been. And I mean, I don't know if I'd say safer, but I mean, those cars were like 900 pounds, you know. So, I mean, I guess mine's a little safer, as safe as a, you know, 2 foot high race car can be. Um, But yeah, really, I just kind of pull it out of my butt and generally looking at the photos and then eyeballing the geometry in my head. A lot of it when I'm doing a chassis like that is um, honestly just thinking, if I got hit from the side, where would this bar go? Or if I crash in the front or in the the front corner or the back, where is this bar going to go? So I try not do anything in a tube chassis where there's a bar ever pointing at the driver in any way. So everything is always triangulated away from the driver in any given situation. Um, so I mean, really, that's as safe as you can really make a tube chassis in that regard. Just make sure nothing's pointed at the driver. Nothing's going to stab you in the ribs or something.
Yeah. It I don't remember from watching the videos of like the car before it had bodywork on it. Did you like take do you take into consideration like the hoop to other frame hard parts line and how high do you make your hoop, or did you just make it look awesome and say if I
Oh,
stick up I stick up?
I just made it the same as theirs. I mean, so so in 1961 was the first year that head bars, called them head bars, were in Grand Prix or in the Grand Prix, the Formula One cars. Um, and they called them head bars. Well, as far as I understand, like any racing, the idea is that you just exploit the rule book. So these head bars, they just made them that, just headrests essentially. There was no triangulation to them. The the driver's helmet, if he even had a helmet, stuck up higher than the bar. I mean, real triangulation didn't actually start coming into like real engineering and that kind of stuff didn't seem to come into racing in that era till probably 1966, 67 era. So for me, I mean, again, I'm not planning to roll this car. I'm not actually racing these cars. So I built it the same as what they would have done it. So minimal triangulation on the Sharknose, no triangulation whatsoever. You just build it the way they built them, right? That's kind of the fun of it.
Yeah, that frame almost just looks like a bunch of ladders just
Yeah,
stacked on top with a couple of X's thrown in. It's like,
yeah,
hey,
oh yeah.
now it's going to be perfect.
Well, this is why I say like on mine I actually tried to engineer a little bit of stuff. On the Ferraris at that time, I mean, if you ever look at one fully stripped down, like a P4 is a good example. If you ever see one fully stripped down, which you probably won't, but I've seen it, they literally start with nothing. Like they're like, okay, we're gonna need something here to support some bodywork, something here to support some suspension. Like a small bar here to hold the alternator. Like everything is an afterthought. It's just as minimal as they can be. There is nothing there that is not needed, and if it can be smaller or thinner, it was. They were designed to be raced and to win and to be thrown in the garbage after.
Yeah, what was the thing if the car's still running at the 400 100 yards past the finish line, you did too much or something?
Yeah,
Somebody said
yeah.
something like that at some
Or
point, I'm
or
sure.
sometimes I'll say like in that era, if you didn't win the race, you usually died. Like if you lived, you were usually the winner
Yeah.
in that era.
Yeah, cuz the cars were just blowing up. So
Yeah,
what
yeah.
then now that you've started these, you've done one, what made you go to carbon plug and mold but wet lay and then paint instead of, hey, now I also want to learn how to bang aluminum sheets out?
Honestly, space. I just don't have like I mean I'm doing all of this in a two car garage. So um I would love to learn sheet metal and aluminum forming and stuff. I just don't have the space. I mean the machines to do it require so much room to work. I just don't have it. I don't have the height or the width, you know. So and that's always kind of been a shame. I've actually never really been exposed to them either. I've never known anybody who's had them near me that I could kind of learn from or try things on. So um, for me, it kind of came more naturally just based on all those factors to um, to try building a plug, plugs, molds, and then either fiberglass or carbon fiber, which I ended up opting for carbon fiber because if you're going to go through all the effort to make the plug and make the molds and things, I mean, you might as well spend a little extra and do carbon rather than fiberglass.
And so you make your plugs out of like regular XPS or EPS, whatever
Yeah,
is
yeah,
available
kind
and the
of.
hardest.
Yeah, essentially the Sharknose I built, if I remember right, it was a closed cell Type 2 foam, EBS. Um, the P or the 206 SP, that one I did with a Type 3 foam, so a little bit harder. But yeah, essentially just carve my shape. And like you said before, I had a friend with a really huge printer, big commercial printer, and so I took that drawing that I was able to find on the internet, found the best version of it that I could, brought it to him, and then we sized it up almost, I mean, hopefully to the millimeter, what we could tell best to the millimeter of what the actual car would have been, and then printed it. So I had a couple different views of the car, and then was able to get a lot of measurements from that, or use that to kind of stick to the side of my phone. And then I have my side profile, and I can lay one over the top and kind of get my above profile and things. So, but then beyond that, when it comes to actual three dimensioning, I mean, that's all, again, you're just looking at photos nonstop, just 24/7, just designing it in my head. And it's all kind of just by eye, carving by eye.
I liked your laser level solution to
Yeah.
symmetry.
Yeah.
It was really slick. I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna go around the corner. If you held it high enough,
That's right.
it will follow that path. And then I just was rewatching some stuff, preparing to hang out a little bit, and I was like, oh yeah, this point works great. This point works great. And I was like, well, I got my laser level. Not that I'm doing body work yet, but I said, well, now I'll know if my fenders are going to be the right height.
Well,
I'll
because
just stick it
you
to
can
the
see the
garage door
droop,
and
right? Well, you can, with a laser like that, you can see the droops or the high spots in say doing a plug left to right. You can actually see it because you can't. Oftentimes, you can't feel that with your hand, and you're not going to see it until you've built the whole thing and then painted it a bright color and it's shiny, and then you're going to look at it and say, "Oh, dang it, the thing looks like a dented up pop can." But a laser, sliding a laser level down the wall very slowly and watching it kind of come down your profile, it'll change. It'll kind of one side of it droops. So we'll kind of do this, and as it goes down the body line, and then you can know where to smooth and where to build up and where to go down and to even it out.
so you kind of did learn sheet metal just from the inside out.
I guess so.
Like when you watch a body guy on YouTube and he's got his lights and he's like, "Oh, let me just put this little ball and a stick through the door here and just tap right here," and suddenly it's all straight. It was impressive to watch, and I was like, it's like a buddy of mine at work says, the simplest solution is almost always the best one. And just like,
Yeah,
hey, I've got something straight. I know it's going to show if there's a curve or a dip. Let me just shoot this over here and see
yeah.
what happens.
Well, it's the same idea, like you said about a body guy. I mean, if you ever look at auto body bay, they'll have those lights that have the
Yeah.
multiple straight line lights. That's essentially what it is. If you look down the panel and you see the reflection and those straight lines wave, you've got a ripple there. The laser is exactly the same idea, because obviously a foam buck is not shiny enough to be able to get that reflection off it. So a laser does the same process just without a reflection.
So did you have problems with adhesive on that stuff? Because I know the last time I did a couple of plug tests when I was laying carbon at first, and like I had problem with the exotherm melting
Oh
my
yeah,
plug a little bit, and then it had a dip in it, and I was like, throwing away
yeah.
parts.
Oh, and this is
Did
what
you
I
run into that, or were you just careful enough?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful. This is what I hate about EPS: is everything melts it, everything eats it. So yeah, I used a spray contact cement,
Yeah.
similar to what a shop you would use for like countertops, like doing laminate countertops. Um, yeah, I mean, you can get water based, but I used an actual spray, and you just kind of learn the distance to spray it from, the the um, the amount to put on. If you put too much, it's gonna start to eat it before it begins to dry, right? So as I again trial and error, you just kind of figure that out. And I just stuck all my pieces together um, with spray contact cement.
And how'd you end up painting it? Because I saw you mixing paint, and I was like, wait a minute, paint's gonna eat that too.
It
What
depends.
paint did you?
Yeah, so I actually find latex paint So if, let's say I have my foam buck and everything it touches wants to eat it or dent it, right? I actually found latex paint worked really well to seal it. And then beyond the latex paint, then I can, well, I mean, I guess I use drywall mud. So it went from foam
Okay.
and then drywall mud, you get your finer profiles and things, and then you can um, really get your fine tuning of shape in it. And then to seal all that, I use latex paint. So it's water based. It's not going to eat anything. It's going to soak into things really well and bond really good. And once I've got a couple layers of latex paint on it, like with literally a paint roller, I mean, you just roll it on, and you're going to get the same kind of orange peel that you're going to get on the wall of a, on drywall. But the nice thing is you let it dry for a good day or two, and then you can sand it, and it actually sands really nicely, especially if you're using a primer, like a primer rather than like a. I mean, I don't know if there's really any difference. I just go to Home Depot or wherever and buy their cans of mismatched colors, mist tints, and yeah, and then you can sand that. So build it up 3 or 4 layers of paint on it. It's now thick enough that you can sand the paint without burning through into the drywall. Because of course, if you burn through into the drywall mud, or even worse, through that and into the foam, well, now you've got 3 different layers of different types of material, and each one is either softer or harder than the other one. It's really hard to fix. So build it up with latex paint thick enough that you're not going to burn through. All you're doing is sanding down the orange peel on it with a block, and then at that point, if you're happy with it and nothing's burnt through, now you can spray it with something shiny. You can spray it with an oil-based paint or something like that. So that's why if you saw that plug and at one point it was red, it was like
Yeah.
actually shiny red. So that had been done with latex, sealed with latex, so nothing's going to get the foam, eat the foam or anything. And then once I was really happy with all the fine profiles and I wanted it shiny to get my molds nice, that's when I was able to spray it with like I forget. I think I just used like a trim clad or something. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I was wondering how that worked. I was like, man, there is no way he's spraying this out of a gun and it's not going to eat the stuff. But I guess I either didn't see I was thinking, okay, maybe he skim coated it with drywall mud because I saw another guy do that
yeah,
he was just making a seat and he had made a foam plug and he skimmed it with drywall mud and then he sprayed auto paint straight onto the mud,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I guess he maybe had a thicker layer. But if
Well, his will
you've
soak
already,
in too. I mean, one of the things like I mean, drywall mud's really porous, right? So even I hate how long it takes to dry, but even when it's dry, it'll still soak in a ton of material. So that's kind of why I like the latex. Is the latex builds up a barrier. So if you did want to use like a 2-part epoxy paint, like a single stage paint, which would actually be really smart, costly, more costly than a trim clad, but it would be smart. Um, you could do that. You could do that right over the latex, and it should hold. Because again, it's just a plug. At the end of the day, it's just a plug. You're going to use it once to make molds, and then you're going to cut it up.
yeah, I I felt so like two minds when you had the kids hammer the plug apart. I was like,
Yeah.
but what if you? And then it's like, well, the thing with the playing cards to make your mold lines was genius. And I'm like, hey, and you explained it so well. I was like, hey, man, it's already got teeth in it. You can't misalign it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after you make the one side with the playing cards and they're just glued down, and that was glued directly to the trim clad like paint,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Carefully, like
So,
I wax the
right.
wax the trim clad and stuff because I glue them down with hot glue, which again you got to be careful with your temperature and stuff. And the end of your gun, you can definitely dent it and stuff. But yeah, you essentially glue the playing cards down, and and then with a little bit of wax on afterward. Ideally, then you can peel them up, and it's not going to take the trim clad with it because you've got a slight layer of wax between the glue and the trim clad. It's enough to not let it release, but it's enough that if you pull on it, it'll release.
Yeah. And then when you made the second part, so the playing cards go down, they get tacked in place with glue, and then
Hmm.
you caulked it,
Yeah.
just from what I can remember from the videos. And
Yep.
then you did one side first. Did you lay up like two sides of the junction at the same time
No.
with glass and
No, the
It
mold.
was
So when you
always
have a
just like,
multi-stage, when I have a multi-piece mold like that, so I'll lay the playing cards or whatever your flange. Essentially, what you're building is a flange, right?
yeah.
A bolting flange. Um, in my case, obviously, it was playing cards. Sometimes it was core plast or whatever. Um, and so you lay up your one side. Well, once that side is cured, then you got to carefully remove all your playing cards because you don't want those to be between your two flanges when you make the next piece of the mold. You want the next piece of the mold to be directly against that mating surface with no flange in between, essentially no playing cards or cardboard or whatever in between. So um, yeah, it's time consuming because you'll lay up one side, or let's say two fenders. Like let's say you're doing like the front of that car where it's, I think the front of that car is maybe 4 pieces, but let's say it's 3 pieces, kind of a fender, another fender, and then the hood, essentially, if you will. I mean, you're gonna have ribs of those flanges down the center of the fenders, so that nothing locks into the mold. Um, Using DAP, like caulking, DAP caulking, um, to seal things, right? Things like that they're not going to melt any foam. Um, they're cheap enough, and they'll peel off. It'll peel up nicely later.
And you only use like the plasticine once you were doing the layup, I think, right?
Yeah, I think the plasticine, the idea behind that is so when you have two mating flanges, so let's say they come together like this and you have a flange in the middle, right? That's your rib for your flange to bolt them together. There's almost no possible way to get that seam right there perfect. You're never going to bolt two pieces together and have no ridge afterward. I mean, you can tell this in toys. If you look at any toy, like a GI Joe, for instance, or something, you can look at it and you can see the lines in it where it was molded and where those molds came apart. You're going to always have that. So when you put your molds back together, you can reduce some of that by using something like a plasticine in that joint and using that to kind of smooth that area.
Yeah, because there's no such thing as a zero radius
That's
corner in
right.
real life.
Another thing about that is the main thing about that is really you're trying to keep any epoxy or resin or anything from soaking down into that seam. And now when you're trying to pull things apart, you've got these, either one, it doesn't want to come apart because you didn't mold release it good enough, or you've got these long hairs that you now need to kind of cut off and deal with, right?
Yeah.
So it acts as a seal, acts as kind of a seal or a gasket, as well as smoothing out that ridge or that corner.
Do you find that did you ever experiment with infusion or actually bagging for debulking and putting peel ply and breather material and mold all of those other layers? Did you?
I've
Because
tried
it
a
doesn't
little bit.
seem like
I've tried a little bit. Again, it's the space. It requires a lot of space and it requires a lot of consumables. You lose a lot of consumables. And if something goes wrong, again, I mean, not like learning all this on my own. I'm sure I'll get there at some point, but right now, I mean, to spend the money on consumables to do that and to properly set up to do it, I mean, that is an entire art in itself. And if something goes wrong halfway through, I mean, throw it all away, throw everything away, and start over from scratch. Your carbon, your resin, or epoxy, your breather cloth, your everything. And so that kind of scared me, especially in these really big, complicated molds that I'm building. It's something, as of right now, it's still something outside of the realm of something I've done, and am willing to risk in a large mold.
yeah, there are a couple of us who are planning on carbon bodying our sevens.
Yeah.
I'm one of them, and I just keep thinking, how much do I want to spend, and how much more space and things do I want to try to cram in here, just so I can say, oh yeah, it's resin infused. Like I don't think it matters if I can get if I can get it to come out of the mold straight and get my blue candy carbon look that I practiced on my one spare leftover sheet to look like like a Zonda. I'm
Hmm.
gonna be so happy,
Oh yeah.
and nobody's gonna be like, "Oh, you mean you didn't debulk it 3 times before?" if they ask, they can take the car. I
All
don't
right.
care. Like,
All right. Well, and
please,
really, I
sir,
mean,
show me what you have done in your spare time in your garage.
exactly. Well, and for me too. I mean, these are not structural parts. Like obviously, if these were aircraft parts, or if it was a wing or something, or aerodynamic type parts, I mean, yeah, obviously infusing or even a pre-preg or something like that. That's where you're going to get your best results and strongest, and best weight to strength ratios and stuff. But again, I mean, these are their bodies. I mean, the fact that it's carbon fiber over fiberglass, I mean, you're saving 2/3 of the weight right there. And when I do my wet lays, I'll wet lay it to kind of the amount that I want it, or thickness, whatever, and then I'll use foam rollers and go over the whole thing really hard and pull out any excess resin. So, I mean, obviously it's still resin heavy comparatively to infusion or prepreg, but it's not like it's fiberglass where it's like running down the sides and it's just tons of resin, bulky everywhere. By no means is it like that.
Yeah, did you what you did the 156 you did in with vinyl ester, yeah, I think
Yeah.
you mentioned.
Yep.
And then because usually vinyl ester is cured with, is it also cured with MEPK,
Yep.
MEKP?
Yep.
And then
Yeah, it
it's
is.
like
Yep.
also wax because I did a polyester part. I did some polyester parts in my car, my regular daily,
Yep.
just skinned, and then I used waxed polyester resin, but it's the catalyst is MEKP,
Yep.
and I just added the wax after. Did the vinyl ester that you have the wax mixed in, and you,
No.
or
No.
did you have to add it?
Vinyl ester comes unwaxed. So I
Okay.
could I could go on for hours about this, but and all the chemical stuff with resins. But yeah, vinyl ester is unwaxed, and you can add a little bit of wax in your last layer if you want to. I never did. I just kind of let it sit, and eventually any tackiness that it has, which vinyl ester has less tackiness than an unwaxed polyester, but over a day or two that'll go away. And
Okay.
vinyl ester will sand nicer than an unwaxed polyester will. We're just right out of the bag.
Because I remade a part with having not really put enough wax in my polyester part, and it just stayed sticky for weeks. It just sat there in the garage, like not finishing. I
Interesting.
bagged it. I just couldn't get enough, uh, air, no air touching it to let it cure. That's my understanding. Is that's what the wax does. It
That's right.
like it
It
seals that
creates a
outer layer
seal.
so that it can.
Yeah. So anytime when I do that on, let's say, a mold, like I'll typically do that with a mold because molds I'm using polyester or an isophthalic. Um, in that very last layer, I will just use PVA. I'll just spray it with PVA after.
Oh yeah, you said that, and I was like genius because I got 2 gallons of that. Like
Yeah, yeah.
so much easier
Just
than
spray it
buying
with
wax.
PVA, and that seals it. And then you can wash it off with water. I mean, obviously sometimes it's kind of a bear. And I've definitely, when I do that with like a large mold or something like that, and then I'll have it in the alley and kind of hosing it off. Or I've taken the like the Sharknose molds I took to the car wash. It was wintertime, so I took them to the car wash and just hose the PVA off the outside of them.
Did you put any flanges like under? Watching you take the nose off the shark nose,
Hmm.
and it looked like it just came down like that. Like there's no other 90 underneath for it to rest on the frame. Does it just sit
Yeah,
on
there's no. Yeah,
itself and
you're
you
saying
don't?
there's no return. There's like no
Yeah,
return
because
underneath.
I was like,
Yeah.
there's that mold would be a nightmare.
Well, in the mold itself was essentially um, the mold was one because I carved the entire car, right? So I carved one large shape, and then I molded that, and then all the detail I did after. So I cut the nostrils out of it. I created the rolled edge on the nostrils with a fiberglass rope later. I cut the scoops into the side and made molds for the scoops. I think all in total, I think there were probably 24 molds, 24 separate molds to create that. But the main mold, the large cigar shape, if you will, was all just kind of one. Um, when the molds came off of it, I think there were 4 or 5 piece mold, and when it all came off it, I just had essentially a big canoe, really, if you will.
So the body line that's there is just where you said this is where the line of the chassis needs to have the cut.
Essentially, yeah.
It's just where you separated it.
Yeah, essentially, and that's and,
And
yeah,
then
and then I cut it all, cut it where it was, and then at that point, then I had to create flanges and or overlays, if you will, right? Like when a door closes, a door doesn't just close into nothing. A door closes into a flange. So I had to create that flange, and in a when you would see a kit car or something like that, what they'll do is they would build it the same way I did. Then they would cut it apart. Then they would add all their door jambs and things like that, and all their flanges and stuff. And then they would remold that. And then that would be, then they could create a nose or a door or a trunk lid or, over and over and over. So for me, because I'm only producing one car, to me, I'll just cut it apart, create my flanges afterward. If I wanted to produce more, I would then have to mold my final bodywork over again.
yeah,
If
the
that makes
door
sense.
flange on the 206, I watched that earlier and I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to end
Right.
up doing my hood from the touching. Like I have a good nose cone, fiberglass nose cone that I will spray it clean and I will pull a plug. I will make that my plug because I'm not going to foam all that. But I do
Right.
have to make my hood. I'll make a foam mold for that.
Hmm.
I do have to make my side panels. But I was already considering, look, my side panel will have one 90-ish angle to hang from the top, and at the bottom it's going to be bonded on because I can make a 90 flange all day. I just stick it on a piece of angle
Right.
iron. It doesn't, like, to me it doesn't matter, and it's under the car.
Right.
So then I'll just bond that. What did you use for your bonding? Did you use like a Loctite panel bond of some sort?
I
You
use
did
a
a little
couple. I
bit of
used a
bonding
couple.
stuff.
Yeah, I did a couple things. I forget what it is. Is it? I'd have to look. Um,
On
but
one of
there's
them, I
like
know that you just put like resin with some ground up fiber, or you made like
sometimes
did you
on
use
the
like a silica powder?
yeah,
Not
kind of.
silica
So
powder.
on the fumed silica
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on the Sharknose, I could do that because I was using vinyl ester resin, and so I could do that. I could make my own glues and make my own bondos or whatever,
Yeah.
what have you, and thicken them to whatever I needed to with either glass fibers, like powdered glass, and then fumed silica or carbon powder or whatever. Um, but with an epoxy, you can't really do that. So with an epoxy, I would use, like on the 206, that was done with epoxy. So on that car, I had to use um, like actual proper like panel bond, um, like you know, two like 1-to-1 type epoxies and things like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, because that I do that with like West System
Yeah,
205,
that's right.
206, and 106 with glass beads.
Yep,
I have still somewhere a thing of glass beads, and that stuff works great. You make your own peanut butter, and then you just
that's
stick
right.
it on. You can dye it. So that is like one of the options that you used.
Yes. In the
But
on the
vinyl ester
epoxy,
is more so.
on the
Yeah.
epoxies, that's what I did because once epoxy is cured, or at least the stuff I'm using, that once the epoxy had cured, if you were to try to bond two panels together with more epoxy, it's just not, even if you sand it, it's just not really going to bond. It's not really going to do what you think it's going to do. It's not going to do what polyester or vinyl ester would do and become one. It's not going to do that.
It's probably why all those panel bonds are like poly something.
That's right.
They're
And why they're
poly
super expensive.
adhesives.
That's right.
Yeah.
And why the good ones are crazy expensive. Like the stuff they use to bond the tubs, like the tub and bits like that together on, let's say, like the 4GT. From what I understand, some of those tubes are like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for a set of tubes. Because
I'll
they're,
stick
I
with
mean, that's the
my
kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that when you're making a carbon drive shaft, and you can glue your aluminum ends into a carbon drive shaft, and the strength of that is just like, you could send that thing to space. I mean, that's why those agents are so expensive.
how'd you bond the ends in your little carbon stays? You made little carbon stays with aluminum inserts in the end. Did you use just panel bond or
On
was it?
on which car? I'm trying to remember now.
I don't even remember. I watched so many videos today.
Okay, probably the 206. You're talking
Could have been. It
a
was just
lot.
a
Again, a lot of
it was a little stay, right, with the two aluminum ends and a carbon tube, a skinny one. It was like a quarter
oh
inch.
oh yes, yeah. So I used like a 1-to-1 epoxy type bond for that. like a West
Okay.
Systems, type thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nothing
those are
crazy though.
you're talking about the little stays for my wing on the 206.
Yeah. Oh, now I can see. I pulled up a picture, like the pictures you probably looked at. The
Yeah.
not yours, but the other one,
Yeah.
the homemade one.
That's kind of the beauty of it, though. Honestly, like I love. I mean, if you ever look at a real, vintage Ferrari of that era, we glorify them, right, and we romanticize them. But I mean, they were hand hammered. They didn't roll these things over English wheels. They were hand hammered, like the Sharknose. If you look at original photos of the Sharknose before paint, there's millions and millions of hammer marks in those things. And even when they were finished, again, we're looking at old grainy photographs from the 60s, painted. They look pretty. They look pretty. They look perfect. They weren't. If you were to look down that or run a laser down that thing, I mean, it would have looked like an old tuna can. And I kind of love that.
That
So
means somebody did it.
for me, having no, a slight lack of symmetry. I mean, it's so slight your eye's not going to pick it up. But even if there are those bits, I mean, that's what makes it a handmade car. I love that. It's really forgiving. I mean, it's kind of like the rat rods. The rat rods are very forgiving in the fact that you can kind of do what you want. You don't have to paint it. There's a lot of you can be kind of ghetto when you do it, if you will. With these old vintage cars, to some degree, you kind of have that still, which is what I love. I love the handmade factor of them, and also the forgiveness it gives you. I it's the perfect place again for me to learn and to grow, and eventually you get to where Chris Runge is, where he's like hand polishing all his stuff. Like it's his the fact that he's self-taught and polishing his panels is insane. People do not understand how insane that is. It's mind-blowing. So uh I mean, his stuff is so perfect. I mean, but even then he would tell you still, I'm sure that, I mean, his left fender and his right fender, they're made by hand. They're made over a wireframe buck, and they're not going to be perfect matches or perfect opposites of each other. There's going to be imperfections, even though they look flawless to the eye.
Yeah, I can't even get stuff back to being flat once I make a dent in it. I mean, it'll be
Well, I've said
flat-ish,
before that.
but
Well, I've said before that aluminum work and the coach work these guys do out of aluminum, that's total witchcraft to me. It's insane. It's insane that you can make metal do that. It's amazing.
yeah, it's like,
I
where
have
did it go?
unbelievable respect for that.
When the guy's like, "Oh yeah, you got to shrink right here on this panel," I'm like, "It's metal, dude. Where is it going to go? You can like, it's not going to become a new samurai sword when you're not reforging the car. Like, you just folded it over and hit it like 800 times, and now it's not even a fold anymore. I mean, how is it even possible? I don't know. Some of those guys are crazy.
That's the beauty of it, though, right? Again, that's the art in it.
Well, dude, this has been awesome for us. Great, awesome for me. I hope that we can stay in contact because I'm sure there's going to be something. I'm like, hey, you know what? I bet Brandon did this already 40 times, and he probably wouldn't mind telling me. If that's cool, I'm sure that there will be a time. But I think this, like, spending a solid hour just chatting with us about all of this stuff. If there's anything else, I think that you're like, hey, let's dig into another topic. I'll sit here all night because I don't have homework. Um, but we don't want to take you away too much from family time or whatever. And maybe there will be another one of these when you get another project and you just say, "Hey, I'm going to do something different" or whatever. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I got a Lancia on the go right now.
oh yeah, I forgot. Okay, so you're building an 037 on what, like from scratch? That yeah, now you ruined it. We're gonna be here till 2 a.m.
That's okay.
So
You
037.
skipped over the P4 too.
Yeah, somehow I'm more into the 037. I don't know why. I just think there's such a neat thing. So you're tube chassis that?
Yes, yeah. So this car actually, I haven't built the chassis. Like I didn't build this chassis. So this chassis actually, so the guy I'm doing this for, we had been talking about it for a couple of months, and kind of putting ideas together. We were going to start with a Monte Carlo, the way these cars were built originally, um, and realistically, like what gets left once you buy a Monte Carlo, even a parts car, and cut it up, the only thing really left of that Monte Carlo is like the A and B pillars and like some of the tub. So it's kind of a lot to buy a car, ship it here because they're kind of hard to find in North America, and then throw 90% of it away. So it turned out that I kind of put a call out on Instagram saying, "Hey, does anybody have a Monte Carlo out there? Somewhere in the world?" And a guy came back to me and he said, "Hey, I think if you're asking about a Monte Carlo, nobody's restoring a Monte Carlo, so I can assume that you're probably going to be building an 037." And he said, "I think I have exactly what you need." So a guy in the UK had actually been collecting parts, and he'd built a full tube chassis and had all the body work and stuff like that for an 037. And then kind of life got in the way, work got in the way. He was doing a lot of work in Italy or whatever, so he was selling the project. So my friend happened to be in the UK at the time. I said, "Hey, go take a look at this car." He went and looked at it. It was done in a very similar way to the way I would have done it. A lot of the same thinking and stuff like that. And so the price was right. And so we bought that and had it shipped home. So he had done all the chassis work on it. And then the original Monte Carlo shell is there. And then all the body work that he had is from the original molds and stuff. So I'm kind of starting with a lot to begin with. But, I'm still building all the pickup points for the suspension, designing, it's like they say, it's, still 90% to go, left to go, even when you're 90% there.
Yeah, 90% of the work gets done, and then you spend 90% of the time, right, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's way worse than the 80/20.
So yeah, this is yeah. So this car's it's got a full cage. So these cars originally, actually, they took the tub, like the cockpit of the car, and they built a back half of a chassis or a cage, essentially, a front half of a chassis / cage, and then kind of bulkheaded them onto the firewall, front and rear firewall of the car, and then kind of built some internal structure to kind of connect it all. They weren't actually a full tube chassis car in that sense. Whereas this one's a full tube chassis car. You could certify this cage. You could actually rally this car because it's a full tube chassis car, not just kind of slapped on the front and the back of a tub.
Yeah, I watched a big.
Which incidentally, which is why at the time back in Group B, the Group B days, I mean, that's why these cars broke in half, and when you see them hit a tree, they you got to really wonder if they really did have cardboard cages inside, because they did not have the structure that this one would have per se.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's just so much information and so much that I appreciate the willingness to share time and information and stories with us. Just, it's awesome, dude. I hope that we can do it again. It's like one of my favorite looking cars of all time. I was thinking if I only could get a Stratos kit, and then what are we waiting 6 years for a Hawk now or something like that? Trevor said that.
Yeah.
They're all sold, and I can't make one out of a AW11 MR2, and it's just like, oh, so right. Everything is wrong.
The clincher becomes the wheels. The clincher becomes the wheels and the windshield.
Yeah, because you can't find it.
It's just the two things. The two things you just can, you better have deep pockets for at least those two things.
Yeah. Well, I think that for us, everybody here at the channel, thank you so much, Brandon. We'll just wrap it up here, and then hopefully we will see you again here at 7 Spot or anywhere. Guys, check them out on Instagram. How is that street legal? Right? It's not how is that even. It's how is that street legal on Instagram.
Just how is that street legal?
And on YouTube. And Brandon Hegedus, thank you so much for being with us, dude. It's really great.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It's been fun being here.